Have you ever wondered what the absolute strongest drink in the world is? Well, today, we're going on a little adventure to find out. We're gonna tackle some really cool questions, like what is the scientific limit for how strong a drink can get? Is there even a limit? And you know that classic party trick? We're gonna figure out why some drinks light on fire with a big whoosh, while others just don't. The answer, believe it or not, involves old school sailors and actual gunpowder. And maybe most importantly, we're gonna get to the bottom of the dreaded morning after. What is the real scientific reason for a terrible hangover? I'll give you a little hint, it's not what you think. Okay, let's start our climb up the alcohol ladder. To really understand the strong stuff, we gotta go all the way back to the beginning to see how any alcohol gets made in the first place. So, it all starts with something called fermentation. Think of it like nature's own little magic show, where yeast eats up sugars and things like grapes or grains, and poof, it makes alcohol. That's how we get beer and wine. But to get the really potent spirits, we're talking whiskey, brandy, vodka, you have to kick it up a notch with distillation. And the entire secret to distillation, the whole magic trick, comes down to one super simple fact. Alcohol and water boil at different temperatures. They're like two roommates who just cannot agree on the thermostat. But here's what's so fascinating. Even with this clever trick, you eventually hit a wall. A hard limit that science itself just won't let you pass. And to get why, let's look at the numbers. Water, as we all know, boils at 100 degrees Celsius. But ethanol, that's the good stuff we're after, it gets impatient and starts boiling at a much lower 78 degrees. It's just way more eager to escape as vapor. So the process seems simple, right? You just gently heat your mix, the ethanol turns into vapor first, you catch that vapor, cool it down, and bam, you've got a much stronger, more concentrated spirit. You can just keep doing that over and over to make it stronger and stronger, or at least that's what you'd think. This is where science throws a curveball. As you keep distilling and that alcohol percentage gets higher and higher, the water and ethanol molecules that are left start to, well, they start to cling to each other. They form this incredibly strong bond and become chemical best friends who absolutely refuse to be separated. Now, this has a really fancy science name. It's called an azeotrope. But you can just think of it as a team-up point. The water and ethanol basically form an inseparable duo. When you try to boil them, they turn to vapor together, in the exact same proportion. Your separation trick just doesn't work anymore. And that unbreakable bond kicks in at exactly 96.45% alcohol. That is the physical, scientific wall. It's the absolute purest you can get with simple distillation. To go any higher, you'd have to start adding other chemicals. And at that point, you're not really making a drink anymore. Okay, so remember that fiery question we asked at the beginning? It's totally connected to how strong a drink is, and the story behind it takes us way back in time, out onto the high seas. You've definitely seen the word proof on a bottle of liquor, right? Here in the US, it's pretty simple. It's just double the alcohol percentage. But where on earth did that weird word come from? Well, back in the 1700s, sailors in the British Royal Navy got a daily ration of rum, but they were always worried that their captains were watering it down, so they came up with a test. They would pour a little bit of rum on some gunpowder and then try to set it on fire. If the gunpowder still lit up in a flash, the rum was proven to be strong enough. And it turns out that explosive little test only worked if the spirit was above a certain strength, around 50% alcohol by volume to be specific. Anything less than that, and the water in the rum would just put out the spark. And that is the real historical reason why your stronger spirits can be set on fire. Okay, last stop on our little quest. Let's talk about that horrible morning after feeling. It's time to bust one of the biggest myths about hangovers. Come on, we've all said it, or at least heard someone say it. I never should have mixed drinks last night. It feels so true, right? But scientifically, just mixing different types of alcohol isn't the main villain. The real problem is a bunch of tiny little things you've probably never even heard of. So, let me introduce you to the real bad guys, congeners. These are tiny chemical compounds that are created during the fermentation and aging process. They're actually what gives spirits like whiskey, rum, and tequila all their delicious, unique flavors and smells. But they're also a huge reason why you get a hangover. Here's an easy way to think about it. Something like vodka is distilled over and over again to get rid of as many of these congeners as possible, leaving it super clean. But darker spirits like whiskey or tequila, they're intentionally distilled less because those congeners create the flavor. So you get more flavor, but you also get a bigger dose of what causes a hangover. It's not about mixing, it's about the total amount of congeners you've had. And get this. Here's a wild fact for you. In Mexico, the law actually requires tequila to have a certain amount of specific congeners, including tiny traces of methanol, just to be legally called tequila. If you take them all out, it just doesn't taste like tequila anymore. So those flavor compounds are part of the package deal, for better and for worse. Whew, okay, after that whirlwind tour through the science of spirits, let's do a quick final recap of everything we found out. So what did we learn? First, because of some tricky chemistry, the strongest drink you can possibly make is capped at about 96% alcohol. Second, that word proof on the bottle comes from an old gunpowder test, and it's the reason spirits over 50% are flammable. And finally, that awful hangover is mostly thanks to congeners, the flavor compounds in drinks, not just because you mixed them. So, the next time you're looking at a cocktail menu, you'll know all the cool science hiding in that glass. You'll know why it might be flammable, and you might even make a smarter choice for how you'll feel the next morning. Thanks for diving in with us.